Hi, I'm Pastor Ken Shorley at the Market Street Presbyterian Church, located at 1100 West Market Street in Lima, Ohio. And I have been doing Bible study on Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. Now we are in the book of Genesis, and I'm going to share with you one book that I use that is extremely helpful. I use several books and do lots of research for each lesson. But I'm just singling out this one book because within this book is a wealth of excellent material for understanding the book of Genesis. Now I'm referring to Genesis, an expositional commentary by James Montgomery Boice. It's in 3 volumes. And I want to share with you a story in this book that Dr. Boice writes about. And this would be volume number 3, volume number 3, page 14 and 15. So I'm going to do some reading from the book. And then talk a little bit about it. He's talking about Genesis chapter 37. Now let me give you a personal example. Among my resources in preparing for this study was a tape entitled Joseph in Prison, a sermon preached in 1951 by Donald Gray Barnhouse, a former pastor of 10th Presbyterian Church. Now that's 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Dr. Barnhouse was a powerful preacher and expositor of God's holy word. Barnhouse said he had recently taken part in a series of meetings in western Pennsylvania and told how they came about. He told a story of remarkable circumstances. It seems that some years before, a certain doctor had done medical work at the University of Pennsylvania and began to attend 10th Presbyterian Church with his wife and young son. Now remember, again, that's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The doctor and his wife became Christians through hearing Barnhouse preach, and then grew in faith during the years of the doctor's further training, internship, and residency. The family was caught up in World War II. Now, when the war was over, the family settled in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, where the doctor established a surgical practice. So if you're not familiar with the geography of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is on the eastern side of the state or Commonwealth, and McKeesport is on the western side, just outside of the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So the doctor moves from Philadelphia to McKeesport, which is near, in and around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They joined a church and he taught a Bible class. Then he persuaded his minister to invite Dr. Barnhouse to his city for a series of meetings. The invitation broadened to include the members of the Ministerial Union of McKeesport, and eventually the meetings grew to fill the largest church in town. Barnhouse marveled how a medical student walked into a Philadelphia church one Sunday, and as a result of that, 10 or 12 years later, multitudes of people in McKeesport were hearing the gospel and hundreds were being blessed. So he's seeing this miracle of multiplication occurring because one medical student came to his church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and then later moves to western Pennsylvania and asked Dr. Barnhouse to come and be a preacher speaker at some type of conference or revival meetings, whatever, and multitudes of people are coming to know Christ because this doctor remembered Dr. Barnhouse and invited him to come. But as they say, wait, there's more to the story. This is the way Barnhouse's story ended. But there is more, which he could not know, but continued as the circumstances guided by God unfolded. That doctor and his wife had a son who attended 10th Presbyterian Church with them while they lived in Philadelphia. During the meetings to which Barnhouse referred, this son, now 13 years of age, now that would be referring to when they were in western Pennsylvania or McKeesport, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. This son, now 13 years of age, had an intensifying his call to the ministry. So the doctor's son is interested in going into the ministry. Unknown to Barnhouse, these meetings had a formative influence on his understanding of what the ministry should be. So the doctor's son is watching Dr. Barnhouse preach and speak and pray and lead people to Christ. He went to high school with this call in mind, then to college and seminary, always making choices regarding his plan of study on the basis of this perceived call to Christian service. Seminary was followed by study abroad. The young minister then went to Washington, D.C., took a position with Christianity Today magazine. There were some problems with the magazine in those days, and some of the staff spent a Saturday afternoon talking them over with a former associate editor, Dr. Frank Gablian. In a side comment during that conversation, Gablian asked the doctor's son what he wanted to do with his life. Did he want to continue doing editorial work for a magazine, or did he look forward to doing something else? The doctor's son replied that he had been training for the ministry and expected God to call him to a city church. That was the end of the conversation. But as it happened, Gablian was traveling to Philadelphia the next day to preach in 10th Presbyterian Church, where the pulpit had recently become vacant. So Dr. Barnhouse is now out of the picture at the 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was met at the train station by a member of the pulpit committee. "Have you found a minister for your church yet?" he asked. And when he was told by the committee they had not, Gablian replied that he thought he had a man for the position, and he recommended the doctor's son. Thus, in 1968, 17 years after the meetings in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, at which Barnhouse's story broke off, nearly 30 years after the doctor's conversion, that would have been in Philadelphia, the doctor, the son of the doctor was called to the pastorate of Barnhouse's own church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then Boice writes, "I am that son. The doctor was my father. This is my story. How small the circumstances, and yet how intricately God used them to accomplish His own perfect plan. That is why we must never chafe against circumstances God brings to us. We call them mere circumstances and treat them lightly, but they are not mere circumstances. They are God's weaving of the tapestry of our lives." So, I just wanted to share with you that story from the life of Dr. James Montgomery Boice, who was the pastor at the 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who did follow in the line and in the path of Dr. Barnhouse, Donald Gray Barnhouse, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the 10th Presbyterian Church. And this author of this book acknowledges that God was at work in those circumstances, and God brought about the situation and circumstance in which he could accept a call to be the pastor preacher at the historic 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I share this story with you, the Bible study group, because I rely heavily upon this book for my exposition of Genesis, but I do use many other resources as well. But I have found that Dr. Boice's work is absolutely outstanding, and I would recommend it to you or to anyone who has been watching this series from the study of the book of Genesis. So once again, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I would like to invite you to come here to Market Street Presbyterian Church, join in our study Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m., or join us for Sunday service at 10:30 a.m., or join us for any event or anything that we are hosting. You are more than welcome. We are located at 1100 West Market Street in the city of Lima, Ohio. Thank you for watching this. This concludes the video.